Welcome to another episode of Purchase to Profits. I'm Seth Ferguson. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss our interviews with successful real estate investors. Our guest today got his first real estate paycheck when he was 12 for cleaning a condo parking lot. He is a real estate investor, property manager, and commercial broker in Edmonton, Alberta, and is the author of the book, Apartment Buildings That Outperform. Chris Davies joins us today. Chris, welcome to Purchase to Profits. It's great to have you on the show.
Yeah, it's great to get to meet you in person. And we were just talking that you picked my book up a year and a bit ago, and it kind of makes an easy intro into the podcast. We've got a lot of shared knowledge to start with.
Yeah, for sure. And for those of you who have not bought Chris's book, pick it up. It's a good read. It's a good read with some good stories.
I had to go pull one out of a box because I knew you'd ask about it.
That's great. So to kick things off, do you want to share with us your real estate goals? What do you want to accomplish?
Oh, that's funny. It's an interesting time kind of in our portfolio as we're kind of just consolidating things and reevaluating. And it's a funny market in Edmonton. Yeah. We have a series of goals. My wife and I am married. I have 4 kids. And part of it is that, that 5-year mark, I would like to spend about a third or half of my time being a broker because I love my job. And the remainder, I'd like to kind of split between time spent on my portfolio and time spent on just being home, being a dad. I'll put a big caveat in there. Part of the thing when I say we're consolidating, like we have a couple of refinances coming up. We bought a building 2 years ago that has been challenging. It depends on who you ask. And my wife's tolerance and willingness to jump through real estate hoops in certain ways has changed a ton in the last year. So, ask me again in the summer after we've done our refinance and had a chance to sit and really talk about what it is we want out of real estate.
Yeah, for sure. So in terms of your consolidation, is this just prompted by, we're approaching the end of the current cycle, or is this more towards what you want to or do you just want to show up your equity position in your current holdings?
Probably more the latter. I mean,
Okay.
We have I own a 20-unit apartment building here and then a handful of, townhouse condos. Yeah. And a lot of it has been, since we bought this $2.2 million apartment building, we've had to put in $90,000 to $100,000 a year. And I come from the business. Like that's just what it is taken. Yeah. So we're hopeful we'll be able to change to some more efficient financing shortly, like go CMHC, go to the long amortizations, and probably bring in a different investor or two. And so once we've squared that away and we're not bleeding cash, then I might be allowed to buy something else. But we're also getting rid of a happy life.
Yeah.
Yeah, getting rid of a couple of the little condos. We've got one in Kelowna that's made some money and we'll just do some profit taking and get an investor out there. We have one in South Edmonton that is never going to get back to where it's going to be, but we've fixed some financing there and we're going to get rid of that and make a buck. And we're going to buy a new principal residence. So once we kind of moved all those parts around and the apartment building in particular has been squared away. So it's tuned up now and we've stopped the bleeding. We just have to fix all the rest of it. Mm-hmm. We will be in a much better place to make some decisions going forwards. But it's a chase, even because I know there are people out there whose significant others are not behind real estate or see someone took a crap on the lawn of my apartment building last week. In a pizza box, which is a new one. It's not the first time someone's crapped on our lawn. When your significant other isn't behind you doing real estate and buying a $300 or $500 or $2 million building, I'm looking at lending. There's a guy in my market doing Airbnb where he rents other people's buildings and rents them out Airbnb style and takes the middle. I'll lend him $5,000 to help set up a unit and get that back in 6 months. And then I get a chunk of that cash. So there's all sorts of interesting little pieces of real estate we're going to look at going forwards. Yeah. But reevaluating the portfolio is big and complicated.
Yeah. And do you have any tips for people if they do have a significant other that's, either supportive or not supportive? Mm-hmm. Do you guys tackle your goals together? Or do you have both separate goals and then you come together with main goals? How do you guys work that?
Yeah, we do have side goals. I mean, like as a as a broker, as a realtor, I have particular business goals. Now, my wife's name is Megan, and she knows about them. We talk about them. I mean, she's technically a director of our company. And that's not just a paper thing. Like, she comes, she sees the books, we have meetings. But how I choose what my goals are really my own. The real estate side has largely been my own. And I'll come back to kind of how we got on the same page there. But like, my wife is a stay-at-home mom. We have 4 kids, ages 1, 3, 6, and 8. So but she has a side hustle too. She does childbirth education classes, and she pretty much takes all her income from that and says, I want laser eye surgery. I'm going to put it away for that. And, we'll use that as her stick. When it comes to real estate, one of the early things we did, I mean, she's always just absorbed it. I'm a third, fourth generation real estate kid. She's absorbed a lot more than she realized when we first got married. But one of the real estate investment, now the Real Estate Intelligence Network, runs a weekend boot camp called Acre, which we used to be, at that time, was probably called Quick Start. We paid the money and brought Megan down for a weekend, and I sat with her and we went through Real Estate 101 on here's how to, determine cash flow and all that other junk. And so when it came time to look at buying this apartment building, she understood the cash flow and the financing in I think a more profound way than had we not gone through that part. It wasn't goal setting per se, but it was understanding that we have a long-term vision of, we want to move to another town, like to St. Albert, just north of Edmonton, and then to a farm. How do we get from A to B was going to involve real estate, and how that's, one of the core things in the book is that, we go through phases as real estate investors of kind of, acquisition, and then stabilization, and then disposition. And there's one in the middle I've realized now, which is consolidation, where you're going to simplify life. You're going to bulletproof things and really start to rock the cash flow. And so, yeah, we're, summer and fall this year, we're going to have a lot of really interesting, sit down and figure out just where it's going to go.
Yeah. And whenever you see a new deal, do you go out and buy some chocolates and flowers just to kind of
We're way past that one, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you're writing, the check to the building this month is like $7,000 or $8,000. Fortunately, my partners are covering that this month. But I think one of the things about having a significant other in real estate is you really got to understand what's important. I mean, without getting on too much of a soapbox, I mean, I take my Christian faith massive. My primary allegiance is to God, and my second job is making sure Megan gets to heaven. And like, if I'm not doing those two things, nothing else matters. Real estate doesn't go ahead of my wife. If that means that I'm going to be stuck working a job and praying I get a pension, that's just what has to happen. Yeah. So for me, what that's meant is, I've had a couple times in the last 10 years when I've said real estate investing gets put on hold, maintain what we've got, but nothing new. Like when I was investing in being a realtor, right now with this apartment building, we don't touch anything else until this building is bulletproof. And I don't think there's anything bad with stepping back and saying, I'm not actively looking. I'm stabilizing, I'm maintaining, I'm creating efficiencies. So it'll be a while. And I think that that's important in real estate, is saying, what phase are you in? And when have you pushed your significant other too far?
Yeah, for sure. And I think you mentioned a really important point there, because the consolidation phase, you're almost rebuilding that foundation so you can jump to the next level. And unless you have that phase where you kind of take a step back and reassess, you can't just keep pushing the envelope every single time, because you'll get yourself into some hot water. Yeah, totally. And we do, we help teach marriage prep at our church. So we get to talk about marriage and couples and money all the time. We're not as consistent as we should be but we do weekly budget meetings, and using a piece of software called YNAB, which is just brilliant. And it's a chance where, like, this whole last 6 months and going forwards,
it's not only, how much income do I have? When's the next deal close? But what debts do we have? What do we have to get rid of now? What might the building cost us next? And that is an optimization phase that, even the most recalcitrant of spouses will be like, oh yeah, I'm totally behind debt pay down. Let's figure out what we can kill now. And that's been really helpful. At least now I know when we reach that point where we've got money to play with again, Megan will be behind us putting it into new places. And that just might be lending. She's okay with that.
Yeah. And do you have any routines or rituals that you go through, maybe daily, weekly, monthly, that helps keep your goals and your vision in focus?
I do. It's funny. I'm getting ready to do a couple presentations for Rain at one of their events here and some other things. And I've often thought that the lifestyle of being a broker and being an investor is the same. So in one way, as a young, old investor, when you're consolidating, we really have a couple levels of it, but I'm old. I'm not like, hey, what's my acquisition goal this year?
Yeah.
I actually just this morning had a call with my other partners. We knew we had a problem with this building, and my partners are super experienced real estate people. They're in Mexico just chilling out. But we know that every Monday at 1:15, once a week for the next, until we get this thing refinanced and stabilized, we're going to talk. As an investor, I don't know that I sit down and really go through what my goals that way are, probably because I've put so much of investing on hold to look at being a broker. And whether you're investing or you're a realtor or you're looking to raise joint venture capital or you're just running your properties, any one of those, you're in sales. You're either, your initial sales contact, upsell, cross-sell, market, after sales service. The big part of the presentation I'm probably going to do is really around list building. And so I have a terrific piece of software I use for a CRM, Salesforce, which, every day I have a dashboard that I check. And even my personal deals and my personal money raising or whatever, or my tenants go into that software. And so I have a dashboard I check every day. I have an assistant that we sit down every Wednesday, usually at 11 after our big team meeting at the office, and say, these are the deals, these are the problems, these are the people we got to reach out to. And then everybody even you, everybody who goes into that piece of software gets put into a bucket. And if they don't, they get put on a list that says, put these people in a bucket. Do they have money? Do they need money? Do they have real estate? Do they need real estate? Are they a tenant? Did I follow up?
Mm-hmm.
That is really the cycle. It's a daily cycle and a weekly cycle. I've only just recently started really getting my head around what the annual and multi-annual goal setting is. I haven't done that in 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, long answer to a good question.
Yeah, no, for sure. And there's no wrong answer. We've had people on the show who are very, very, very anal with their goal setting. And then we've had other people, they just kind of free flow, laissez-faire. So it's always interesting to see how people, because everybody's got a slightly different mindset on what works best for them.
Yeah, it's funny too. The one of the things I love about this version of Salesforce that I use, it's called Apto and it's built for commercial real estate. I log every email and almost every phone call. And so I have goals for how many people I need to touch base with. I'll pull it off the sticker. 1 building, 10 calls. If I did that every day, contact 1 new building owner and called 10 buyers or sellers, I would make $200,000 a year. Yep. That's how the math works. And so it's nice, even when I have, the bad mental health days, it's about to be minus 22 again. It'll be a sad, sort of cold day.
Yeah.
I can go back and look at it and realize, what? I felt like I had a crap day, but I made 36 phone calls. And so I think just knowing what the different levels of churn are going to do for my business and not necessarily having a goal. I do the formal goal setting thing, but knowing I have targets, and even just on a really crap day, I can see that I get pretty close to part of that target. Yeah, I should have sent you a screen cap of what my dashboard looks like. because it's red until I do 20 calls. And then the yellow band goes from 20 to 40. And then over 40, it's green. So
you're trying to hit the yellow or green every day consistently.
Yeah. And it's been, having that type of, you can call it accountability software, but trackability and knowing all my like every email or conversation we've ever had is in this piece of software. And it blows people away when they say, I called you, or they call me thinking it's the first call about an apartment building. And I look at the file and I was like, hey, you called me about this random building on the south side in 2012. And they're like, how creepy is that? But hey, it really blows sellers away particularly.
Oh, and that's a really good lesson. Even let's say on the syndication side, you're dialing for investors or you're going after cold calling owners. Keeping track and having those targets on a daily basis. If you're making, like you said, those 10 phone calls a day, it's only a matter of time before you start getting that deal flow or that capital.
Absolutely. And I think too that for something people forget, it's huge for the simplest investor on the planet. The two things that I think most people miss, and there's a realtor investor here named Terry Pranich, who's I've heard speak a bunch. I mean, the thing that's come from my experience is we buy a place and we put a tenant in and then we pray they never move, but we never call the damn people and ask what they're doing. That should be a 90-day phone call cycle. It should be on your, you can do it with Google Calendar or anything you want, but call them, ask how they're doing. Don't just pray they're going to stay forever. The other side is people wonder how we get these off-market deals. Everybody wants some big off-market crazy deal. If I'm doing my work and I discover that Seth owns an apartment building, I should call you every 30 days until you're dead. Like on this bookshelf back here, I have copies of, in Alberta, the Western Investor going back 10 years, because when we get bored, we go through it and say, is that address in our database? Who's the owner? Call them every 30 days until they're dead, and then find out who their kids are and call the kids. Yep. Like there's nothing that's more complicated. I spend 90% of my time in this room wearing these headphones, making phone calls.
Yeah. That I think that just lays out deal flow and all that pretty simply.
Yeah. Real estate, everything in life is sales. It's all sales, realtors, investors, property managers, tenants, whatever.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. So let's talk about a deal. Is there a deal that stands out as a keystone deal for you that really propelled you forward?
There's ones that I'm tempted to talk about the apartment building, but we'll probably get back there anyways. Yeah. The very first property I ever bought we'll probably actually sell it this spring. We'll wait and see what happens. I bought in 2008. I had I grew up working for my family, my dad and my mom and my grandpa. We were managing 1,600 residential units and another roughly $1 billion worth of commercial property and land. And I moved to Kelowna to follow my then girlfriend and got a job in marketing, and it was great, and thought, I took my first RAIN course and I was like, I'm going to buy some property. And it's a townhouse in Southeast Edmonton. But if you ever watch any of the financial collapse shows, The Big Short, Margin Call actually is probably my favorite one. The day that everything went bananas is the day that asset-backed commercial paper collapsed. In the morning, probably about 10 o'clock, it's all burnt into my memory. It's ridiculous. We're 10 years later. Peggy called me and said, TD said yes to a 100% loan to value, interest only mortgage. We just have to send it to CMHC. And it goes there, and then I kind of hear rumblings on the news because it was early days for Twitter. I'd been on Facebook. I was an online marketing guy. I get a call from Peggy at 2:30 that says the markets are collapsing. The best we can, CMHC said no, they'd stopped everything. And the best TD would do is 30% down P&I payments. And we did the deal anyways. But somewhere in the middle, shortly thereafter, as the market was unraveling, now I'm lucky. So what I bought was a townhouse my parents were flipping, and mom ended up leaving her equity in as a VTB, and we own this thing together. If you ever do a deal with parents or family, I'll do a handshake deal with you. If it's family, get it on paper. And mom and I have a written joint venture agreement, always. But as the markets unraveled and we went into like recession, my grandpa died in 2011. I hope I got that right. I called him and said, what do you do? How do you deal with the recession? And I don't even remember what he said, but to put it in perspective, going into the 80s recession here, grandpa had 17 properties, most of which were apartment buildings, and came out with 3. Like, he sent tons of keys back to the bank. And, the thing that, it's why my book is dedicated to grandpa. There are things we can't plan for. And there are resources and supports you don't know existed. We're always looking for ways to make the deal work and find the yes, and yes, find the good deal without stopping to look at the negatives. So after I bought that property, I bought a principal residence 2 years after that, but we sat on the sidelines for a long time, except for like a couple of really careful flips. So before we got into our next buy and hold, it was a case of finding the perfect partners. You need to find a joint venture partner that if everything goes crazy, you can call them every month and say, I need $10,000 this month, again and again, and figure out how that's going to land. But that very first townhouse, and we had 10-year tenants. They were amazing. They just moved out. The new people looked to be just as good. We often don't learn enough from the bad things that happen. You look for lots of positive stories. Yeah. You learn a lot from the negative stories. Like, I won't buy a 0 down house again unless there's like a whole lot of safety net I understand now. Yeah. But you really got to stop and figure out, what could the bad be and how do you plan for it?
Yeah. No, that's a really good message. So let's hop over to that apartment building because, poo in a pizza box sounds interesting.
Yeah, that was... And when I wrote the book, or whenever I talk about this stuff, I try not to be all, you get a bunch of landlords together and have a beer, and it's always like, they did this to my unit, they left this behind, or, I opened a door and there were like 3 naked people. Yeah. We have found a lot of dead bodies over the years, but, so the basic story of what happened with the apartment building, we bought it at what we felt was, the bottom or a small rally in the market. We had a 3 or 4 month gap between conditions coming off and closing. We thought we had a small up in rents, 6, maybe 8%. By the time we closed, so we went unconditional, I think in June. And by the time we closed in mid-September, rents were down $50 to $75 a unit. And we were having competitors do 3 months free rent. Most of them 2, sometimes 3. Yeah. So, that that quick stabilize and refi was great. I also had a problem with a manager that we had a cockroach problem that did not get handled. And we went from almost full building to 50% vacant. So when you put those 2 things together, rents are down, incentives are up, manager goes crazy, cockroaches go nuts, building goes empty. We squeaked through our first 1-year renewal by the skin of our teeth, and we had it, the ship mostly righted. But when we get to the end of the 2nd-year renewal, I am super grateful that we have the best lender on the planet on our building. And they helped us work through it. They brought in a B lender to take a piece of their mortgage. And we are well squared away to having this thing refinanced. Yeah. And actually, lots of your folks will look at bringing joint venture partners, money partners into their deals. We've had conversations about giving that building back to the bank and taking what's left. But it's so much easier for me right now to try and sell an investment to someone and say, with enormous faith in what we've managed to do and the skin we've put back into the game to say, hey, we can go find you a new building, or you can take a slice of the one we just spent 2 years and $200,000 on upscafooting. Mm-hmm. Would you like that instead? It's a funny experience, but you've got to, I think that's the concern I have as a guy. Like, I only do multifamily. I don't sell singles at all. If someone walks up and says, I have $700,000, I'd like to buy a building, I won't let them. I strongly encourage them not to put out more than, 60 to 70% of their available cash. Because a multifamily building, you get that income multiplier effect, all these good things we love. If it goes bad, it goes absolutely to hell in a hand bucket. It's just awful. So I've become more cautious, and I think it's serving my clients better. But we did have somebody, we had a young guy in I won't say the name of the unit. I've said this story a couple times now. Nice young guy, got his parents to co-sign on the lease. Always a good idea. Turns out he had a little habit, and his drug dealer kicked him out, took over the unit, put some gang people in there. And so we evicted them. The cops came and got rid of the other people. We secured it. They broke in again. We secured it. They broke in again. We secured it. But we are like right there on top of it. And, we went door to door in the building to all the tenants saying, we're here. My dad needs to move anyways. He's got some health problems. He's going to move into the building for a while. And it's great to go to the tenants and say, my dad is here. And he's been a property manager for 35 years. Yeah. We're here. We're taking care of it. We know this is where you live. It's not an income stream. They're not tenants. They're clients. I'm a rental housing provider. I'm not here to make a buck. I'm not making a buck. But that, it was, as I said to my partners this morning, I was like, I found it remarkable now that I look back at the last week at how quickly we were on top of that and how effective my on-site manager was in really, hitting that. She had them out and evicted and the unit secured before I found anything out about it. I didn't need to know. She didn't tell me. She just fixed it. It was amazing. Yeah.
No, that's great. Let's circle back to when you first looked at that building. What attracted you to purchase that building? Was it because you had that small upside in rents? Was there a value add component in terms of renos or?
Yeah, it's funny. So we've managed buildings around town for a long time. The old owner of that building bought it in 2003, and we managed it since then. It's a classic Queen Mary Park, Edmonton. Like any of the Rain members who hear this, that's like the classic Don Campbell line is, a walk-up building in Queen Mary Park. So I knew the building. I knew the maintenance profile really well. Its suite mix was 9 1s, 9 2s, and a pair of bachelors. So a lot of people try and look for that 50% 2-bedroom mix. On a main thoroughfare. And there was a lot of infrastructure and a lot of revitalization coming to that area. We have a new arena, we have a bunch of new LRT, we have a new university. So it was a good time to get in there, and we thought we had a small up on rents. But it was also one of those conversations where I bumped into the owner at a meeting and he said, yeah, we had an unsolicited offer for this building, about. And then a couple months later, I forget if it was the first time or the second time, I had just dropped a little hint. He said he had an unsolicited offer and they were going to chat about it. And I said, hey, if it ever goes sideways, I know you won't let me sell it for you as a realtor, but I would look at buying it. And I followed that up a couple months later with another note. And then 2 months after that, I get a text like right out of the blue. We might look at your offer. And so we wrote an offer and went and looked at it, and away we went. Yeah. But it's the classic, I might not buy it again at the same time, but it's exactly the type of building that I try to look for. We paid a fair to cheap price. We got a solid building in the right area with the right suite mix. Once we got into the due diligence, I would have dropped it. I was too interested in saying yes and not interested enough in really digging into what the problems are, or I would have put $200,000 in a bucket and had a lot more substantial reserves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that you had a decent amount of time between your conditions were up and when you closed, it was like 4 months.
4 months, yeah.
What was the reason for having that extended closing?
That's an awesome question. Something I've actually been reflecting about just as an agent. I mean, we do 10 or 20 deals a year. They're not a lot.
Yeah.
Is doing a proper post-mortem and timeline analysis on each one. And I should do that on this building too. A typical closing window would have been 30, 45 days. I think we pushed it at least to 60 because the seller was traveling. And actually, my partners were traveling. We're trying to get this damn thing closed. She is in New Brunswick, like they're from the Calgary area, so they're close. He's in Palm Springs. She's in like somewhere in New Brunswick, and we're trying to get like last minute paperwork signed. And I'm calling lawyers, and we're couriering documents all around the country. I guess when it's glad I'm a Remax guy, because all I do is call the local Remax office and be like, I need help. I'm kind of screwed. Yeah. And I've got someone everywhere. But yeah, that was, there were a lot of delays with the financing thing. And actually, as it ticked closer to closing, as they got hit with the couple, I think we went in conditional with 3 or 4 vacant, and it was 5, 6, 7 vacant by the time we closed. Yeah. And I had an amazing mortgage broker on that one who saved our bacon. The bank would have held back a couple $100,000 and we would have been just screwed. So yeah, for sure. Lots of hair on that deal.
Yeah. Good lessons learned though for people watching this. These are some really good lessons. So with that, you mentioned, you're not really, at this point, you're not really sure what's going to happen. So you've got some long-term debt on there right now. So you can just ride it out if you want to.
Well, so the thing right now, when we bought it, we put interim financing on it. So, a 75% interest only first mortgage. Yeah. With the renewal we're on right now, the rate went up by about a point, which I felt lucky to get. Yeah. But we're trying to switch that out and put good long-term debt on it. And we'll sit and be happy for the long run and slowly swap my other partners out. But it's going to be interesting.
Yeah. And so what would, if you were to do that deal all over again, or a similar deal, like what would you change with how you approach it?
Yeah. I mean, when I sit down with partners from the start, I would have put a lot more in reserve. I mean, we had a reserve fund that was probably $100,000 on a $2.2 million deal. Closing costs got out of hand. The bank required us to do some stuff at the last minute that I, was new to our market. They made me pay out the rest of the year's property taxes, which is $9,000. So, 10% of your reserve is gone right away. Yeah. When you get into something, there are any deal of any type of property. Looking at this is like, especially in Alberta where we don't have rent control. When people ask me about cap rates and financial metrics, they're always kind of crap because the rents 90 days from now can be completely different. So the old rents don't matter. How they did their maintenance in the past doesn't matter because I'm going to do something different in the future. So what I would have done differently is I would have paid a lot less attention to their financials at the start and focused more on where we want it to be and what it'll take to get there. And as we got into the financials more, I would have wanted to look and ask a lot more questions about why people are moving and what's going on with the people. Particularly, I mean, the pest control issue was something we ran into big time. And they had spent a large amount of money in the previous 2 years. And we felt, based on talking to the manager, that it was handled. What we failed to do is keep a close enough handle to totally kill the problem. So once we stopped, my manager went nuts, quite literally. The problem flared up again and got way out of hand because we weren't handling it effectively. I had the wrong manager at the wrong time. Yeah. So that's part of it. But, it's confirmation bias, to use the psychological term. We look for ways that it'll work. So I would have probably gone in with the partner saying, there are these problems here. We think it's going to work out okay. And here's what it'll look like at the end of the day. But if it all comes unwound, you have to be ready to, empty out a building, do some renos, reoccupy a building. So you're going to carry your debt service for 6 or 8 months with no help. And you're going to pay, you have to understand just how bad it could get before it gets good again, which is why if someone comes along and says, I got $1 million in cash, I say, great, spend 500 now or 700 now and hold the rest of it. So if it all goes crazy, you're not going to get, maxed out, because foreclosure and bankruptcy don't have to be scary. They're just legal processes. But, it's just thinking about them stresses my wife out.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So after all that doom and gloom, let's talk about some happy stuff.
I love it.
So how has real estate impacted your life in a positive way? We've had, some stress and some gray hairs. What's been good about it?
It's funny, when we first started buying townhouses, like before I bought an apartment building, my true pitch to investors is, when I had one kid or two kids, mostly when I had two kids, their university plan is that we buy a property for each of them. Alex has one in Mill Woods, Sam has one in Kelowna, and the next two have units in the apartment building. And so Alex is now 8. And I've always said that the kids get financial literacy is obviously huge for a lot of people in our communities. At Christmas, we go there because the tenants have been on a 3-year lease that is up at the end of December, and we have to drop off a Christmas basket and pick up rent. So Alex comes with me. And so the kids get to know at this age that, this type of stuff, what we're doing is not investing for your university. They get to see the numbers and they get to understand the financials. Like even in elementary school, it creates a bragging thing you got to deal with, but they can see the financials. It's bringing Alex there and getting him to pass off this gift basket and trade jokes with the, really bad puns with the grandpa who lives there, is I think more important than anything I could give him financially. Is just helping him understand. I mean, first off, that we're rental housing providers. We, especially from a Christian context, serve others before anything else. And I think that, karmically speaking, if you want to go that way, when you do those types of things, they come back to you in spades. So watching your kid understand that our job is to provide stuff for others and that benefits us, was absolutely my high point last year.
Yeah. No, I think it doesn't get more important than that, for sure. Mm-hmm. No, that's great. So Chris, if somebody's looking to get a hold of you or learn more about what you're doing, how can they find you?
Absolutely. LinkedIn, Facebook, all those things. I'm just Chris Davies out of Edmonton. ChrisDavies.ca is my blog, which I'm sad to say I don't update very often. But I worked as an SEO guy for a long time. If you Google Chris Davies real estate, you're almost certainly going to crash into me. But, Facebook, LinkedIn, those things are great. Or drop me an email. It's chris@chrisdavies.ca.
That's great. Well, Chris, just want to say thanks so much for sharing those interesting stories with us today.
Thanks very much, man.
Yeah. And to you, our viewers, I wish you well in your journey from purchase to profits. See you next time.